Hello, hope everybody's staying sane out there. We're back at Baby Blue this afternoon. Give you a look at the back end suspension and back axle and see what you think of that. So we're still running the Atlas axle that virtually everybody runs in the back of an Escort. It's been about since Jesus was a child. The historic cars and the class 14 Millington cars all still run these. With a few exceptions. They've grown like everything else and got stronger and more bracing and better quality kit, I suppose, in many ways. This is a fully floating axle, which means it's got a fully floating hub at each end. You've got two twin taper bearings in there that carry the weight of the wheel on the axle, so the half shaft just slides in and out. It doesn't carry any weight like a semi-floating axle would carry the weight of the car. So if you land on heavy stuff, you could the possibility of breaking off a half shaft and losing the wheel. You'll not get that with these. It's 6-linked. You have your 4 links going forward, bottom one and top one up there, going forward to the car and back to the brackets on the axle, keeping her in position from back and forward movement. And then you have the watch linkage tire at each end, and the watch linkage going across to keep the axle in the middle of the car through all its travel. It's not rocket science to set up. It just takes a wee bit of time, like everything. A lot of people get a bit muddled up in what holes to put the end brackets in because you have multi-choices and bits and pieces. 15-inch car, rarely do these run level, so don't get too tied up in that. The main thing is that when you have the axle centralized, that you don't have it going through an uneven plane or going in an S shape. You want it going straight up and down. So the simple thing I do is just make sure the car is level, drop a plumb line down through the middle of that nut, and then take the springs out, jack the axle up and down through all its travel, and it should be going straight up and down your plumb line. If it's going in an S shape or going to the one side, then you're going to get a quiver in the back of the car and it's going to feel a bit funny. So it's not hard to do. You can change the length of your arms to move the pivot or the points at the end. Once you have it done, pretty much stays like that until you change something dramatically. So that's worth spending a bit of time on. Most of the stuff in this back axle outside it comes from Group 4 Fabrication Galway. All our fully floating hubs and bits and pieces all come from them, and the alloy plate at the back. Some cars don't run these. I like them. They probably don't add a whole lot of rigidity, but they just look right. A Group 4 Escort one of them just doesn't look right. It's handy place to put your canisters on. The back plate is also Group 4. That one I put on in last year. I actually broke the pivot point off the back of it in one of my little bumps, so I had to get a new plate. But these are a bigger and stronger item. They're using them, some nice features on them. They're actually thicker there, so you've a better amount of material to work with. I fractured a few of them in around the edges where they started to weep. I don't think that's going to happen here. See, also they took a recess out of them now, so the bolt clears easier, top and bottom, which is a nice feature, and they have a drain plug on them also. So I don't think that's going to be giving me any bother anytime soon. What else on the axle? I haven't used the under brace. You'll see a lot of people have an under brace, goes right through to the bottom to adjust camber and keep the axle from squeezing up and down. It's not an issue I've had and not something I felt I've needed. Maybe at some stage in the future I'll do it. I have put the toe kit on. This aluminium bracket again, Group 4 Galway, and it comes up and bolts on to another bracket you've got on the side of the axle. And that, you can adjust that to pull the axle in. You'd be amazed how much that can move the toe of the axle, to the point where it's actually kind of a dangerous adjustment tool. If you went a bit crazy in that, you could actually bend your axle and have your half shafts running crooked. So it's important not to use that too much. I pull it in roughly about 2 millimeters each side, so about 4 or 5 millimeters toe in total on the axle at the back, and that seems to work well, and it stops her from spreading her axle when she gets a lot of grip and a lot of power going through it, and she starts to spread her shoulders back. That sort of keeps her in check and stops her from doing that. Anytime I'm doing geometry, I always slack them off and make sure the axle is sitting where it should before I start tweaking in that. And that's an important thing, because you could find that every time you do something, you turn it a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and you end up with a nicely bent tube and a half shaft running crooked. The half shafts we use are tractive half shafts. could probably do a full episode on them alone. They have a lot of nice thinking. I got half shafts made before a couple of years ago, which turned out extremely expensive, but a lot of thinking in them. I found it unattractive, where they work a lot on the thickness of the shaft and how it chamfers down, and the splines at the end into the diff are short, just about the width of the side gear, and they don't run into the shaft. The shaft has to be a smaller diameter there, and then they step it up as they go along out towards the drive flange. But so far so good. I don't expect them to last forever, so I do sort of 8 to 10 events on a set of half shafts and then swap them out for new ones again. So touch wood, they've all been good. Forelinks, pig's head angles, all that kind of stuff. It's one of them things, you'll talk to 10 different people and get 10 different answers. The pig's head angle I've tried it in various positions, it doesn't seem to make any difference. I think the forelink angles are much more important as what way they pivot, because obviously when you put power on a car, the pig's head snout's trying to lift, so it's pushing on the bottom forelink and pulling on the top forelink. And recently I've started to play about. I've drilled a new set of holes up there to drop the pickup point at the top. My thinking is, when the shaft is pushing into the car and that one's pulling, that I want to pull the weight of the body onto the axle to get more traction. That's something I'm playing about with. I might, before too long, do another set of holes, maybe even 2 set of holes, and just play about how far you go before it gets wrong. That's the only way to find out. Again, you'll talk to 10 different people, get 10 different answers, but trying it and seeing what works, and what works for you, what works for different people. You probably noticed by now the weird anti-roll bar. It's just a normal anti-roll bar. I've just chosen to put it in a weird place. Mate of mine, Ali Burrows Motorsport, I've seen them do this on an Escort once. And it's the only time I've ever seen it. I thought it was a cool idea, so I did my version of it. It's bolting on to original pickup point on an Escort, which I think was for an anti-roll bar on our S2000 or whatever, I'm not sure, but bolts onto there, goes back, and I just made a small angle bracket that bolts on with the bottom forelink bolt and a small 8mm M8 bolt to keep it in one place. Probably ends up with that roll bar running a wee bit on the low side. I haven't run it behind, I've run it forward, but it hasn't caused a problem. It's done a couple of rallies now. It hasn't caused a problem at all. I would imagine gravel on the forest would get a fair beating, but I would be taking that roll bar off going to the forest anyway. I don't like anti-roll bars in the car full stop in the forest, so it'll be gone. So that's another thing I'll be playing about with. This car very rarely goes to 2 rallies in a row with the same setup. It's probably one of my biggest problems, is messing with the car. Inside the axle we have a gripper differential, which I've been running for quite a few years. They seem to be strong, they seem to be nice and progressive. I like the way they work. They give very little trouble. With the kind of power we're putting through, you can snap the end bearings off them from time to time, as with a ZF and any other one. So I would run mine usually about a season, maybe a season and a half, and then put a new one in. Crown wheel and pinion, 4.6 crown wheel and pinion. I've been getting them from Grade 4 and Galway again, and it's their own brand. So I've been using that, and I've used them maybe for 6, maybe up to 8 rallies, and then swap them out, put a new one in again. So that's what it's all about with these, is keeping them fresh. The suspension itself is the DMS. Anybody that knows me knows I'm big into my DMS, and I look after them for lots of people and do the maintenance on them and the service of them here. They're not manufactured anymore, but we can still look after them, and I'm very fond of them. On the canister here we have 2 adjusters, and the red is high speed bump and the blue is low speed bump, and up in the pin on the top, which I'll show you in a different video, there's a rebound adjustments, a high speed and a low speed as well, so you have 4 adjustments and they work really well. And I run a double progressive spring. My thinking on suspension, and again it's different for everybody, is running the car as soft as you possibly can get away with. That way you're soaking up stuff, you're not breaking and wrecking the car, and you're getting grip and traction all around. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, and that's what I could feel comfortable with. Not everybody's cup of tea, but that's the way I work. Looks a bit agricultural the way I have these just Jubilee clipped on there, but I've tried various ways of doing it and lost a few canisters, but this has worked and doesn't mess about. These pipes, and any shock remote canister, you'll have the same issues, but these are braided specifically and they're quite heavy, so every time the shock moves, the axle moves, it's trying to push the canister instead of flexing the pipe, which is what should flex. So any kind of other bracketry has gone AWOL if there's big clips or big cable ties or fancy bracketry. So this is what works and goes straight through the aluminium pipe back bracing goes back around again, and that's what works and that's what keeps them there. So might not look pretty, but it does the job, and that's what it's all about. I think I've covered most of the stuff on the axle and the suspension there in the back. I'm sure I've missed plenty of things. Maybe when you look at it, you'll think, why has he done that, or what the hell's going on there? You probably noticed that my folding boxes are all cut out. I just sheeted this off, just flat, got rid of the pig's head tunnel. I just modified car, it doesn't need to be there. It even makes her easier to clean and keep right, and it's so much easier to work at. There's so much more space for exhaust and all bits and pieces. So it's something I did quite a few years ago, and I've never regretted it. She's still nice and strong in there. Nothing's going to break off or disappear. So happy to do that. Happy to work with that. These 4 links are the heavy duty ones as well. If I was running this in the forest, I'd actually add a bit of angle iron along that bottom one especially. Once you bend one of these, never straighten it. It'll never be right, because as she's pulling on the top and pushing at the bottom, she's always trying to bend this. So I've done that once and realised the hard way that's not a good idea. So just swap it out for a new one again. Alright guys, I hope that's been of some help to you. Probably asked more questions than I'd answered, but there you go. All the best till the next time.